Hi, today we're going to talk about a great succulent called Cistanthe grandiflora. You may know it by its older name Calandrinia spectabilis or by its common name Rock Purslane, but no matter what you call it, it's a terrific succulent. It has beautiful long flower stalks and gray-green succulent foliage. And the unique thing about these flowers is that they bloom continuously here in Northern California from about April through September off of 18 to 3 foot long flower stalks. And these stalks will open up every day mid-morning and then close back up again at about 4 o'clock and just repeat day in and day out, opening and closing. And on days like today when it's quite windy, they will stay kind of semi-closed as well. The bumblebees love these flowers. They're on them constantly, and they're also deer resistant, and it's native to Chile originally. They're very easy to grow. They root really quickly. This clump, it's actually huge. It goes all the way down the bed. You just can't tell because the bougainvillea is covering it up. But it just started several years back from a couple of little cuttings that were given to me, and it's just exploded since then. So I'm going to show you how you can make your own rooted cuttings and grow this plant on your own. So you always want to have several nodes on a cutting, and you never want to take a cutting from a section that has flowers. That's because the plant has already put a lot of effort into trying to produce the flower, so even if you remove the flower, the cutting still won't be as strong. So I can take a cutting from here, and it's so succulent, I'm just going to snap it off, and there you have a great cutting. You always want to leave a stump below the node, and a node is where a leaf or a branch comes out, because that is where the cutting wants to root. If you cut it flush with the node, then the plant will have a tougher time rooting. And like I said, these are really easy to grow. I'll show you later in the video a cutting that I literally snapped off, stuck in the ground with some rooting hormone back on a rainy day in December, and now it's a nice sized clump and just started to bloom. Okay, so we have our cuttings here, and these have all calloused and dried out and already have the rooting hormone on them. These have not, and I'm going to apply the hormone. And honestly, with this plant, with Cistanthe, you know, it's going to root either way. It's really easy. It's just a very easy plant. So, but I was curious though, does the data show that it's actually beneficial to let succulents dry out and callus or not? Because you always see oftentimes that you're supposed to do it, but I wanted to know, is that what commercial nurseries do? And I found a good study from a commercial nursery, and they said that yes, that the plants, the cuttings that were allowed to callus actually did root better and faster and made a saleable plant faster. So that's good enough for me, so I will do that with most of my cuttings. So with this one, I'm going to strip off some of the leaves. And less foliage is better with cuttings. It's really painful to cut them, but sometimes you can just cut off about 50% of the foliage, and that helps the plant when it's sitting in the potting media without any roots to support it. Any water that leaves through the leaves, it's hard to replace because it doesn't have roots to uptake water with from your propagation media. So on this, you could, I know it's painful to do, but if you want your best odds, you can cut off about half of the foliage and then strip off the bottom leaves too, because those are just going to rot poked into the soil. And then we can dip it in the rooting hormone here, and then take, I use a chopstick or a pencil, and just sort of, I say, pre-drill your holes so that you aren't damaging the tissue or scraping off the rooting hormone when you place it into your media. So here's another one, and I am going to cut off some of the foliage here. I won't do this all, just a couple. And I'm going to give this one, I didn't give it enough of a stump when I cut it, so I'm going to cut it just a little bit above the node, so now it has a nice long stump, because that's the easiest place for cuttings to root. If you cut off just below the node, then it's tougher. Okay, so that one is in, and then with all of these, I'm just going to leave the foliage on. These have calloused, they've dried out, they have the rooting hormone, and I'm going to go ahead and put them in as well. So here I wanted to show you all the cuttings tucked nicely into their propagation media. And for the media, for succulents, it's recommended oftentimes to use a 50-50 ratio. Half organic, half inorganic materials. So for this, I used 50% peat with 50% perlite. You could do 50% peat or compost along with 50%, say, pumice or perlite. You know, any combination of that would be great. You could also do a fully inorganic mix. You could do half perlite and half vermiculite, and that would work really well too. You wouldn't want to keep them in that long term, but for propagation that works well because vermiculite helps to hold water but not too much water, and with the perlite it provides good drainage. So either way. And I also pre-wet the soil before I inserted the cuttings, just so that wetting it just helps to compact the soil a little bit, so it makes it easier to hold the cuttings in place. And then once I was done, the cuttings felt a little bit soft because they had been drying out for a few days. So I just re-wet the soil again, and then also wet the foliage just to help hydrate things, since they don't have roots right now to help uptake water. So after 2 to 4 weeks, you can give your cuttings just a very gentle tug to get a sense of how formed the roots are. And these will probably root pretty quickly. And I would say after 1 to 2 months, then I'll probably look to transplant them to wherever I want them to be in the garden. Or you could try growing them inside if that suits you. And so speaking of rooted cuttings, now we're going to run outside and take a quick look at the cutting that I just stuck into the ground in December and see how big it is now. So here's the plant that I made from a cutting back in the wintertime. I remember it was December 8th. Don't ask me why I remember that, but I do. And it was a rainy day and I was in a rush. So I literally just snapped off a piece from the mother plant, put some rooting hormone on it, and stuck it in the ground. I was having this whole area planted back then. So that has been, what, 7 months, and I'm happy to say that it's a nice big plant, as you can see, and it actually bloomed. Today was the first time that the bloom opened up, and it's late in the day now, so like I said, they close up. Now it's closed, but we have one flower stalk there, and we have another one coming here, and then another one here. And you can see several flower stalks that are about to emerge. So yeah, that's pretty impressive for a little more than a half a year old plant. So if you enjoyed the video, if it was helpful, then please give it a like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.